Welcome back to the channel, my YouTube family. Welcome back to more Insurgency Sandstorm. And today what I thought we'd do is we'd have a look at your loadouts and have a big deep dive into your loadouts and see if there's anything in there that might slow you down as you're traversing the maps. Ooh, big words, G4. Should be exciting, and the results are going to surprise you a little. Let's do it! So we're back on the range today, and we're going to run up and down. We're going to use this strip here to run up and down. I'm going to chuck a timer on, and the first thing I thought I would do is let's have a look at different weapons with the attachments on, off, all the rest, and just see if any of these different weapons classes actually slow us down a little. So for the large majority of the testing, I'm going to use this M4A1 class right here. In the initial weapons testing, we do start with an M4A1 with no attachments, and then we will run various attachment combinations and then look at some other weapons. But for all the rest of the testing, we are going to use this particular class here, just so it's consistent, same as the area we're running in. We want to make it as consistent as possible. Now, there is a little bit of fluctuation in testing. I can't do this absolutely perfect every time, as you would understand, but I've tried to keep everything as close and as controlled as possible for this video. And with the weapons that I've chosen outside the M4A1, they have just been chosen at random, just a weapon from various classes, just to test the different classes out, because in various games different classes should have different carrying weights. So there's no real rhyme or reason why I've picked these. A lot of these weapons have just been picked at random. So we're starting off with the M4A1 with no attachments, just to get a baseline. Just keep an eye on the timer here. You'll see it's around the 9 to 9 minute 20 mark with these. So here is the M4 with what I'd normally run, normal attachments, which you saw earlier in the video when I was talking. Here we go. We've put a drum mag on to see if that slows us down. And then we've added a pistol. We're carrying a pistol plus an M4 with all attachments. And the strange thing is, so pistol only, you would think a pistol only would be lighter than, you know, an AR, for instance. I really didn't see any difference in any of these weapon combinations, attachments, no attachments, LMG, SMG, didn't matter what I actually carried, it was all about the same time. So there doesn't seem to be a specific penalty for using a particular weapon class, and there doesn't seem to be any weight different weights added to any of your weapons. So that is the good news. So you can quite confidently use any particular weapon with any combination of attachments, and you should be pretty safe, and that it's not going to add any weight to your character. I must admit, I find this incredibly strange that there wouldn't be a determination on different weight of guns within each different class. Guess I've just been used to playing other shooters where you definitely have a weight penalty depending on what size of gun you're using, but anyway, that's the way it is in Insurgency Sandstorm. Next thing we're going to move on to is the ammunition carriers. We're going to have a look at those and see if adding those actually slow us down any. So we're going to work our way through all the different ammo carriers in the game, and I'm going to tell you up front, none of this really made a huge difference. I would say some of the lighter attachments shave off milliseconds, but really as a whole within this group, there isn't a huge difference between the grenade ammo pouches, whether you're carrying lower amounts of ammo, higher amounts of ammo. It doesn't really matter. doesn't seem to be making any difference to the overall speed of your character, which is incredibly surprising. I would have expected to at least, especially with the higher amounts of ammo, see some kind of change in your character speed, but although there may be slight changes, overall there's nothing significant that I could find. So the last thing that kind of occurred to me is I loaded up the grenade pouch with a ridiculous amount of smokes and flashes and frags, and just to see whether that would make any difference. You know, it makes sense that if you load something up, it should be heavier, but once again, no significant difference seen. So I'd heard or I'd read that the armor in this game does slow you down slightly. So I'll move on to the armor now, and let's see what happens then. And then we're going to look at some armor and ammo combinations, just see if that's going to make a difference. So here we go with the light armor on. We actually see a slight decrease to our speed, strangely enough. Just with light armor on. It's not by much, it's probably within the margin of error, but it's a little bit quicker. Let's have a look at what the heavy armor does. And strangely enough, the heavy armor has a very similar speed. At least in my testing it does, so that doesn't seem to work. So I was getting a bit frustrated here, so I thought light armor, heavy carrier, see if that does the job. Not really. I was getting really frustrated, so I went, okay, let's go heavy everything and see what happens. And it's funny because I actually feel with some of these combinations I can feel it heavier, but the timer's saying, oh, that's a little bit longer. Let's load this up with some smokes and some flashes and just see if that makes a difference. I think we're finally on to what's slowing us down now. And you can, this feels slower, feels a little bit slower too. And certainly, yeah, that's a lot slower. So what have we learned from today's exercise? Well, in the majority of cases, a lot of the stuff's not really going to slow you down significantly. But yeah, if you're going to use some of the heavier combinations, heavy armor and heavy ammo and extended mags and stuff like that. Okay, guys, yeah, I thought I'd cut in at this point because, yeah, G4, that's fantastic. Thanks for all that information. That's great if I'm running between buildings in short bursts. But what about traversing the map on longer distances? And so I had actually rendered the whole video up, and I was thinking about this and thinking, well, maybe my testing's over too short a distance and I should do a little bit more just to see whether over a longer distance there is a more pronounced effect and something I'm missing. So I'm going to show you a series of tests now. I'm going to show you the loadout at the start, and then we're going to run along this pathway over a longer distance and just see what happens over that kind of more realistic distance that we'd be covering when we're moving from point to point on the map. So I started with what I'd normally use, the M4A1, just to keep it consistent. My usual setup, as you saw at the start, and then we're going to slowly build up each of these different loadouts to make it heavier and heavier, and then I'm going to have a look at the LMG that we featured earlier and just see if it makes any difference to what we've already seen in the kind of short running bursts in the testing. And effectively, the answer is, regardless of whether you're running over a short distance, a long distance, the same results are applicable. Although I did find with the LMG, it did add a little bit more time. It did slow me down just slightly, but not by much. So some of these are a little bit more pronounced over a longer distance, but as such, the results that we've already showed you are pretty on point and give you a good reference to how these affect you in game. So there you go. That's the conclusion of all the testing, and I've got to say, it surprised me a lot when I done this testing, because I was led to believe certain things about the game, and certain things weigh you down, and I've already started adjusting my loadouts appropriately. You know, I can afford to run more ammunition, for example, on my loadouts, and yeah, it was quite eye-opening for me to do this testing. I'm not sure quite how I feel from a realism point of view, because I would expect certain things to weigh you down and slow you down, etc., etc. But however, that's what I've found in my testing. Pretty happy about it. I hope it's useful for you in game. If it is, let me know down in the comments below. Make sure that you subscribe to keep up with everything Insurgency Sandstorm, and we'll catch you next time on the channel. See ya.